Down to the Wire is on the air here on Vegas Insider. Kevin Rogers with you. Happy Hump Day. And we are one day away from the NFL season starting tomorrow. Bills, Rams. And we're about, 26 and a half hours away from the start of the NFL season. So looking forward to that. We're going to get some trends, a lot of trends on that Bills-Rams game coming up in just a few moments from Vince Akins, who joined the show last year, the Daily Insider. Of course, Down to the Wire is only 3 weeks old. But he joined us on the Daily Insider back last season every Thursday to break down the top trends in the NFL and college football. He's got the trend machine going, and we're going to look at the Bills-Rams game, including a couple other NFL matchups, as well as Alabama-Texas in just a few moments. But before we get to Vince, I want to tell you about our MLB best bet for tonight. Our first one, it's a side. And last night we had Tampa Bay. They beat Boston handily, so good if you got them. We're going to stay in the American League East tonight. You have the Blue Jays facing the Orioles in Baltimore, and we're going to back the Toronto Blue Jays tonight as a road favorite for our first best bet of the night. Now, Alek Manoah, he is starting for Toronto. He won his last start against Pittsburgh, was pretty sharp, went into the eighth inning, didn't allow a run, and beat the Pirates on Friday night. He's actually, the Blue Jays are 0-2 in his last two starts. He's winless his last two starts against Baltimore. In those two starts, he was laying 200, 170 in each of those, and he allowed 7 earned runs in 10 2/3 innings. But I think Manoah bounces back here. Dean Kramer was originally supposed to start for Baltimore, but he got scratched in favor of Tyler Wells, who's coming off the injured list. So Wells' his first start in a bit. Always tough to back a pitcher coming off the injured list. But we're going to back the Toronto Blue Jays here to bounce back from last night's loss as our side of the day. We'll have our total of the day coming up in just a little bit. But let's get some NFL and college football trends. Vince Akins joining us right now here on Down to the Wire at SB Breakers on Twitter. And Vince, it's good to see you. He is live in somewhere around Cleveland, and his Guardians are playing well. We'll see if his Browns do well. I want to get to that first before we get to the trends, Vince. Good to see you. What's the thought process in Cleveland with the Browns fans with no Deshaun Watson moving forward? The Baker Mayfield revenge game coming up this week as they face Carolina.
Yeah, so I think we're going to learn a lot about Kevin Stefanski this season. So thanks for having me, Kevin. But not having Baker obviously a big revenge game this week. But I think we're going to see a lot about Stefanski and how he can scheme things up with Jacoby Brissett under center. Last year, I think the thing that gives the Browns fans some hope is the way that they won a couple of games with Case Keenum under center, running a pretty limited offense, but Keenum was, the prototypical game manager in those games and did enough in Stefanski's scheme. So I think the hope is that Brissett can be Keenum, maybe a little bit plus for these first 11 games of the year, starting with a pretty favorable schedule: Carolina, the Jets, and then Steelers at home the following 2 weeks. So that Brissett can keep them on track, give them a little bit more than Baker did last year when they went slightly below 500, keep them, 500, a little above 500, hopefully maybe 6-5 in those first 11 games, and then give the team a shot at the playoffs when Watson comes back.
Also, a number I dug up here, Vince. I think you like this or not like it, depending on your perspective, I guess, with the Browns. Kevin Stefanski, 4-10 straight up as an underdog, and he's a slight underdog this week, obviously, because Deshaun Watson's not playing. But it should be interesting to see if he turns that around going into the opener. Now, we have a couple games to go over. Your trends. You have a ton of trends you have to sift through. We went through 3 NFL games. You have 3 NFL games and a college game. Let's start with tomorrow's game. Bills and Rams in LA, a game that's been talked about for a long time. People are excited about this opener. And what do you have here? Bills a slight favorite. Now you got a lot of stuff with Super Bowl winners coming off of last year, but what do you have with Bills Rams?
Sure. So obviously a very interesting game, one we've been looking forward to for weeks. But yeah, to see, we have the Super Bowl champion hosting, as typically the case in this opening Thursday night. But to do so as an underdog is a bit of an interesting situation. So a bit of a tricky game to handicap. So I'm going to look at a couple of trends on both sides of the spread here and let you guys decide. Well, let's start with the Rams side of that ledger. This is one that you're probably going to see cited a decent amount. The Super Bowl champions the past 20 years, 17-3 overall in the first game of the next season, 13-6-1 against the spread in those games. Only 4 of those 20 teams have been underdogs. A couple of those are on the road as well. I know the Ravens one year were asked to play on the road at Denver, coming off their Super Bowl championship in 2013 there. But those 4 Super Bowl championship champions that have been underdogs 3-1 against the spread. The most recent of those was the 2016 Broncos, actually, and that obviously that was a rematch of the Super Bowl against Carolina, playing without Peyton Manning. They were a slight home dog in that game, but did win 21-20 in that Super Bowl rematch. Here's one interesting stat. Not looking at just Super Bowl champions, but any team that won a playoff game last season. So you make the playoffs and win a game, obviously a pretty successful season for most NFL teams. Not many of those teams in general, not even just Super Bowl champions, open up as a home underdog the next season. It's actually only happened 5 times in the last 21 years. Their database goes back with playoff data. In those 5 games, these teams have been home underdogs, won a playoff game last year. Not only are they 5-0 against the spread, those teams are 5-0 straight up as well, winning by an average of almost 15 points per game. Most recently, and this one has a little bit of an asterisk because it was last season with New Orleans hosting Green Bay. That was hosting in a neutral site because they had to move that game to Jacksonville. But as the home team in that game, New Orleans won as the dogs 38-3. Again, all 5 of these teams won a playoff game last year. For last year, that was New Orleans beating the Bears 2 years ago coming into last season and won handily as a home dog against Green Bay. The final thing we have on the Rams side of the ledger here is Sean McVay and the Rams in opening day. And that under McVay, the Rams are 5-0 overall and 5-0 against the spread in season opener. So with McVay at the helm, they've gotten off to fast starts, and that's something that could be a trend going forward here. So having said that, I said I was going to look at a couple of things favoring the Bills as well, and we have 2 team trends here. I'm starting with going back to McVay again and the Rams. Actually, as a home underdog recently, it hasn't happened very often, but they've not been particularly successful. The last 5 times the Rams have been home underdogs of more than a point. They're 0-5 overall and 0-4-1 against the spread. It's only happened 2 times under McVay as they've been a home dog more than a point. And that's the most prominent one was a 2019 primetime game against the Ravens, which they lost 45-6. The other one came back in 2017 against the 49ers, and that was a 21-point loss as well. And then finally, this is obviously the Bills, the road favorites in this game. It's still a tight line. So I looked at the Buffalo lines within 3 of pick. The last 2 seasons, so just going back 2020, 2021, in the regular season, Buffalo's a strong 9-2 against the spread. When the Lions within 3 of pick them for either team.
Vince, just, going over that game before we move ahead, and it's unbelievable how this line movement where the Rams were opened as 1 months ago, and then it moved to Buffalo 1, and now 2.5, and it could get up to 3, that all this love for Buffalo because of them being the Super Bowl favorites. Everyone knows what happened in that Kansas City game in the playoffs. They should have won that game, and who knows if they would have faced the Rams in the Super Bowl. But are you agreeing with this line movement? I mean, you got so many trends that favor the Rams here, but do you agree with the people on the Bills?
Yeah, it's an interesting spot, and I think if it was just any game, any regular season game, say in week 7, I can see, Bills -1 pick, Rams -1 being the line and kind of sticking there. So it's interesting. I think it's a lot of you weigh the preseason hype on the Bills, and I know their futures just keep getting bet, and those lines keep moving down. But on the other side, we have the Super Bowl champion, obviously the celebration, and typically those teams have done pretty well at home in the first week of the season. So I'm a little surprised. I wouldn't expect it to get to 3 here at any point. That'd be pretty shocking. But within 1, 2, 2.5, I think it's a pretty fair line. Before we do leave this game too, I actually just discovered a trend a little bit ago. So we got a little bonus one here for the viewers. And this is an interesting one because it's player specific. We look at Matthew Stafford in season opening games. So Matthew Stafford, obviously most of those happened with the Lions and then last year with the Rams. Matthew Stafford's team has gone over 11 straight season openers. That's over the totals. This is an over-under trend. 11 straight times season openers. He's actually 12-1 in his career in season openers. But the one comes kind of a bit of an asterisk because he left the game early, and this all the way back in 2010. People will probably famously remember this game. It was the Lions-Bears, the Calvin Johnson overturned catch game. One that is the only under his career, but that was Sean Hill under center for the second half of that game because Stafford left. So every game he started and finished, all 12 season openers, they've all gone over the total.
The one I remember too, Vince, is that Lions-Colts game. It was 39-35 in Indianapolis when Andrew Luck was still there. That's another one I remember as far as a an opening week. That's a really good one, Matthew Stafford going over. So you wonder if the points are going to come. And one last note in this game before we move on. It's just funny how the fork in the road, in a sense, with the Super Bowl champions versus the Super Bowl loser. Super Bowl losers always struggle to cover the spread in week one. And Super Bowl champions, you would think, oh, they'd be down, that the hangover from the Super Bowl, yet they play well. You mentioned that 17-3 straight up, 13-6-1 ATS the last 20. That's a big sample size, 20 Super Bowl winners. And yet for some reason, they always do well. And the Super Bowl losers, because you have Cincinnati hosting Pittsburgh in week one, that for some reason they go different directions, which is so interesting.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. We have a decent sample size now with this team. It's not just the 20 Super Bowl openers, but there's a little bit of consistency to most of these games. Almost every year, that team is hosted. It's been on Thursday night. They do the ring ceremony. So I do think there is some value in looking at that Super Bowl winner game one as well, because you're getting a consistent scenario, not just team off Super Bowl win.
So let's look at college now. We're gonna shift to college and go back to the NFL just because days of the week. So Saturday, Alabama, Texas. They're meeting up in Austin. Two blue bloods. Obviously, Alabama way ahead of Texas right now, just because Steve Sarkisian is trying to rebuild the Longhorn program. They had some struggles last year after the Oklahoma loss. We know what Nick Saban's done. Sarkisian worked with Saban for a bit. But Alabama, nearly a 3-touchdown favorite in this game on the road, 11 a.m. Central kickoff in Austin. What do you have in this game between Bama and Texas?
Yeah, it's a bit hard to pick the marquee game of the day. So I think this one qualifies, even though there's a 20-point line currently. But not as strong. It's been kind of an interesting move in college football the last few years, where the season openers, there's a lot of big-time matchups, where it used to be, 5-10 years ago, all teams would kind of schedule this cupcake week one, and then week two would have some of the marquee matchups. But however the case is, we have Alabama, Texas, two obviously blue blood programs here. So a couple different notes, and this is an interesting one because you can look at it either way on Texas. And Texas is an underdog, which is something that they've become more and more accustomed to in recent seasons. Just looking back to November 2020, Texas has failed to cover and obviously lost outright 5 straight games playing as an underdog. So those recent games, tough spots. Texas has not showed up. But the kind of the catch to that is they were single-digit underdogs in all 5 of those games. And then if you look at Texas as a double-digit underdog, which has happened 6 times since going back to October 2015, they've actually covered 6 straight times as a double-digit underdog, winning 3 of those games outright. There's a couple of games against Oklahoma in there in that mix, but yeah, 3 outright wins and 6 straight covers in those games as a double-digit dog. So then finally, I try to look at some league scenarios and league NCAA scenarios in this case. So this is, I thought, kind of interesting. You have a big road favorite in non-conference games. That's kind of a unique situation because a lot of times, the big programs don't schedule themselves on the road. This is a bit unique with Alabama playing a really good team. But so you don't see a ton of huge road lines early in the season, and particularly looking past the season opener. So I went back 2008, road favorites of more than 10 points. So we're talking double-digit favorites over 10 points in non-season opening, non-conference games. So that qualifies here, and you're going to see a trickle of games qualify in the next couple of weeks until we get in the conference slate. But those teams have covered an impressive 60.8% clip. That's 183 and 118 against the spread. I'll mention it one more time. Road favorites, more than 10 points, non-season opening and non-conference game. So this is what we have here, kind of a new situation. Alabama playing in the non-conference. We'll see how long this is qualifies as that, but 60.8% clip.
I'm looking back here, Vince, at just Texas of late, and you talk about some of those double-digit covers, and a lot of them came against Oklahoma because they're not going to be a double-digit underdog that often. But just looking back even to 2014, now granted, I'm not a Texas fan or a Texas alum, so I remember it as well. I have to look up these numbers. Since 14, when Charlie Strong took over, and then Tom Herman 3 years later, then Sark last year, they've had, Charlie Strong was under 500, 6-7, 5-7, 5-7. Tom Herman was 7-6. They had one really good season where they went 10-4, then 8-5, 7-3 in 2020, and then 5-7. So there's been a lot of clunkers there. That's why I guess we can understand now. It's not crazy for Texas to be an underdog. I mean, this big of an underdog is a little insane just because they're playing Alabama. But Texas, I didn't realize how far they fell that quickly when you look back at the numbers.
Yeah, it doesn't. I'm just speaking subjectively, it doesn't feel like it's been that long. So that's it. Obviously, we all know Texas has been down, but it feels more like a couple of years. When you think back to to Colt McCoy days, that's more than 10 years ago since Texas was really prominent. And Vince Young before that, obviously. There hasn't been a ton of real successful Texas teams in really a decade now.
That was 2009 when they went to the national championship when Colt McCoy had the shoulder thing against Alabama. 2009, Vince. Like, think about how long ago that was. Like, when they were really like at the top of the sport. So anyway, all right, that Texas game, very interesting against Alabama. Now let's go back to the NFL for Sunday and the late kickoff. Chiefs and Cardinals in Arizona. This line's blown up. The Chiefs are now a 6-point favorite. It was at 3. Now it's at 6. DeAndre Hopkins, we know, is not playing. He has that suspension that is going to take him about 6 games. Kyler Murray, we saw the struggles last year, Vince, when Kyler Murray was injured. They were 7-0, lost that Packer game, and everything went south after that. But Mahomes and the Chiefs coming off of the conference championship meltdown against Cincinnati. So what do you have here with the Chiefs, a road favorite in Arizona?
Yeah, a couple of interesting things. Obviously, all these NFL games, we're looking at either things that happened last year or some line total things, because a lot of the things that I like to look at are previous couple of games don't apply yet, and those will build up as we get into the next couple of weeks of the season. But starting with looking at season openers for the Cardinals, interestingly, they are 3-0 against the spread in the Kyler Kingsbury era. So, just the last 3 years together, and 2-0-1 overall in season openers. I think we kind of forget because everyone's down on Arizona a little bit, but they have gotten off to some pretty good starts the last couple of years before fading. That started in the first game. The first year, Kyler's first overall game, they played a weird tie against the Lions a couple of years ago. Since then, which they did cover, they're actually dogs in that game. Since then, they defeated San Francisco as a touchdown dog in 2020. Then last year, as a small underdog, won big against Tennessee. It was a 38-13 really statement game, and it was a real outlier, ended up being for Tennessee during that 2021 season. So some nice performances there from Cardinals to start the season. But what really stood out to me this game, I was kind of interested in seeing how Kyler and Cliff have performed as the big underdog, because they're not in that situation a ton. But there has been some situations, particularly as people interest kind of fades in the Cardinals. But interestingly, since 2020, the Cardinals are 5-0 as an underdog of at least 4 points, and that's not just 5-0 against the spread; they are 5-0 outright as underdogs of at least 4 points. So you're talking about 5 straight big upset wins outright as an underdog. A lot of those have come against the divisional opponents, but and then even going back to the middle of 2019 season when they were underdogs a lot more in that 2019 season. They're 9-1 against the spread in the last 10 games as a 4+ point underdog. The Chiefs, meanwhile, look on the other side of this, have just been kind of so-so as a road favorite, a little worse than that actually recently. I think people picked up on that a little bit during last season, but just going back to November 2020, the Chiefs are 2-8 against the spread as a road favorite of more than 3 points. We're talking about more than a field goal. They still won 7 of those 10 games outright, which is 2-8 against the spread, laying a pretty good number on the road.
I'm just staring at Arizona right now, Vince, and the 5-0 number is so interesting. I remember that Tennessee game last year where it was a sneaky game and Arizona blew them out, and Kyler was great in that game. And I think the other thing too, Vince, is Arizona, the last thing you remember from them was that horrible performance against the Rams in the playoffs in that Monday night game, and Kyler had that bad pass that got intercepted where Arizona had a second or third down. They almost converted. They didn't get it. And then it was the pick 6, and it totally went sideways for them from there. DeAndre Hopkins is obviously a big is a big negative, him not being there. But you got to think, is there any value here in Arizona just because of those underdog numbers you mentioned? And everyone's going to think, well, the Chiefs have got to be better. There's no Tyreek Hill there anymore. So it kind of cancels out their 2 top receivers.
Yeah. And, I mean, even when if you just think about it in terms, obviously, we see that the Cardinals have had some nice performances as big underdogs. Even if you just think about it in terms of these teams' win totals, and the Chiefs have a strong win total. The Cardinals is 500 is slated by 500 win total coming into the season. Typically you wouldn't see you would think about that kind of spread in their win totals. You would think the road team might be favored by a point or 2, but you wouldn't think 6-point favorites. Just thinking about that, and that is what bettors are theoretically telling us what their season long expectations for these teams are. And so I'm not, the Hopkins being out might have a little bit of a factor into it. And obviously it's factored in the win total as well, but it is an unusual line to see, nearly a touchdown at home. This isn't the Jets or the Texans here. This is the Cardinals that are, obviously coming off a playoff season and are, at least middle of the pack in the NFC, if not better.
And also Kingsbury too. He's also, you mentioned the home opener thing or the opener thing, but he's also been good that first half of the season. People talk about the second half, Arizona falls apart, but the first half they started off well. I don't know, it just seems like maybe a look that people are so disrespecting this team. And as Kyler goes, Arizona goes, but he's healthy. He keeps them in these games. So interesting one there. Now let's look at the Sunday night game. Bucks and Cowboys. Tom Brady's back from his retirement. He's back from his vacation in the preseason. Dallas has injury issues. It feels like people are down on the Cowboys. Bucks are a short favorite here. Remember, Tampa Bay beat Dallas in the opener of last season. They didn't cover. They needed a late field goal to beat them. They were heavy favorites. Now, a little more manageable, but the Cowboys, you're getting them as a home dog. Vince, what do you have in this game?
Yep. So I wanted to look at some similar things. Obviously, another marquee matchup. This one may be a little more in line with what you'd expect from two above average playoff teams a season ago. So I want to look at teams as home dogs, road favorites. Let's start with the Bucs side here, and they have not been that great as a road favorite. Just going back to December 2020, road favorites have no more than 10 points. So there's been a couple of huge road lines they've covered, but in that December 2020, road favorites no more than 10 points. They're just 1-7 against the spread in those games. A couple of bigger outright upsets too. I think they're 5-3 overall in those games. But not been that great against the spread as a medium to low road favorites. On the other side, though, some interesting things looking at Dallas. And they've had a decent amount of games the home underdog recently. Most of those happen without Dak under center. So I eliminate those, even though their performance is a home underdog, even with Andy Dalton and I believe Ben DiNucci. I think he started at least one game as a home underdog. Hasn't been that bad, but I wanted to look at just games with Dak Prescott. And it's been a couple of years. Most of these are 2018, 2019. The last 4 times Dallas has played as a home dog with Dak under center, they've won outright all 4 games. So some mainly small lines right in this range, like 2.5 points. But outright upset wins in all 4 of those games. And then finally, I just want to look at Sunday Night Football. We talked about these new situations, Sunday Night Football games, just the last 2 seasons, and how home dogs do in these night games. So since 2020, home dogs, Sunday Night Football are 8-2 against the spread, and 6-4 outright. So they've been nice performance. That tends to fluctuate a little bit from time to time, looking at primetime games and how dogs and home dogs perform. But recently, it has been pretty nice for home dogs on Sunday night.
What about this one here, Vince? Not counting the postseason. I know we could do whatever we want, manipulate the numbers, but since Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay in the regular season, they're 1-8 against the spread in his primetime games. Is that something that the only game they won and covered was, they have a couple wins in there, but I'm saying just covering, was the Giants last year on a Monday night. Past that, he's been awful. It was the New England game last year that they barely won. They've lost to New Orleans a few times in primetime. That's just so scary to me. I just don't know why Brady or him and the Bucs don't perform well in these primetime games. It's almost better to take them during the day.
Yeah, I think that's one I seem to remember us talking about last year as well. I forget which primetime game. The Bucs obviously have plenty of them. It might be a case. Obviously, it's hard to quantify this, but Tom Brady being 45 years old, he's a guy who's very routine oriented as far as his schedule. Probably not doing a lot of nights, other than playing these primetime games when that's not the case. So there might be something to that. Just as simply older guy, routine. Brady's very routine to peak for these 4 o'clock games, and the primetime games just treat him a little differently. Having said that, that's something I could easily see breaking this year as well. But there might be a little bit something to that, thinking about it being Brady specific.
Yeah, and they were 3-6 against the spread on the road in his road start. Well, his road starts like he's a pitcher, but it was 3-6 ATS on the road last year. So interesting. But again, I don't really think we know what Dallas is about either. A lot of people are really down on the Cowboys, but Brady missing that time in the preseason, the vacation, the other stuff, the retirement, the coaching change. There's a lot going on there in Tampa Bay that people, I think are kind of forgetting. So like Brady is Brady. He's 45. He's going to figure it out. Where Gronk retired, they have offensive line injuries. I don't think we know how solid this Tampa Bay team is right now.
Yeah, I think that the preseason only added to that too, and the question marks about the Buccaneers and what exactly is going on there and how prepared they are. A new coach, we didn't get to see a lot of continuity, despite a team that has most of its key players back. There are some question marks, and when your quarterback's the age of Tom Brady, it's there's always going to be question marks. At some point, the wall is gonna hit, and you're not going to necessarily see it coming. If you ask me 10 years ago, I would have thought it was 5 years ago already. So we are going to get to that point with the Buccaneers. Not having seen him a lot in the preseason is hard to tell exactly what you're getting in week one.
Vince Akins, you could find his work at SB Breakers on Twitter, and also you can look for his pick packages on Vegas Insider as well. Football, baseball, basketball, although we know basketball now, but still football and baseball. Find him, Vince Akins, great handicapper. And Vince, we'll talk to you soon. Good luck to your Guardians. We'll see if they make the playoffs. But Vince, we'll definitely talk to you again on down to the wire. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and good luck, everyone. There's no more exciting time than the first week of football. Everyone's got a winning season ahead. So good luck, and we'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good. That is Vince Akins right there, and always good to have him on. Good friend of the show. He's got the trends. He digs deep in a lot of these trends, and I'm really curious to see what the Browns do when without Deshaun Watson to start the first 11 games with him being suspended, and what Jacoby Brissett can offer, and also the Baker Mayfield revenge game, and also Joe Flacco. Interesting that he's going to face the Ravens week 1 as a starter with the Jets, and then he faces Cleveland in week 2. So he faces his old team, and then he faces an old nemesis in week 2 when he was with Baltimore for so long. All right, let's take a look now at our second best bet. We gave you the Toronto Blue Jays as our first best bet tonight. Now, our second best bet's a total, rather. We had the side earlier. Our total, Arizona and San Diego, as they continue their series at Petco Park. I'm going to take the under of 8 between the Diamondbacks and the Padres tonight. Now, when you look back at what these teams have done, Arizona shut out San Diego in game 1. The Diamondbacks were out to shut out the Padres in game 2, up 5-0, but San Diego rallied back for 6 runs, won 6-5, crazy walk-off last night. Now, when you look ahead to tonight, Yu Darvish takes the mound for the Padres. He's been excellent against Arizona this season. That number is 4 earned runs allowed in 3 starts. The unders hit 2 of 3 times against Arizona. Now, the Diamondbacks have scored 5 runs or more in 5 of the last 6 games. Their offense has woken up. It's performing very well. But I think this one tonight goes backwards. Let's go with the under between Arizona and San Diego for our total of the night in Major League Baseball. We'll get to our NFL trend of the day coming up in just a moment. But first, I want to say about Bet365. And Bet365, they have partnered with Vegas Insider to offer new users an amazing welcome offer. Bet365 Sportsbook is offering an exclusive bonus. Customers can bet $1 and get $200 in free bets. Users must use the code NJVIP at sign-up and be located in a legal betting state where Bet365 is licensed. This is for new users only, and full terms and conditions apply. Again, that is Bet365. Check them out today. All right, now time for our NFL stat of the day. Yesterday was the Colts, telling you how bad they were in openers. We're going to stay in the AFC South. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I feel like they're a very hot pick, not only for season win totals or at least to maybe make the playoffs, but for week 1, they go to Washington to face the Commanders. And this number here, we got to throw it up on the screen, and don't throw up when you see the stat. 6-35, their last 41 games. Is that true? Look at this. Is this a true number here? 6-35. They won 6 of their last 41 games. 41 games is 2.5 years. They've won 6 times, and you're going to back them. So Jacksonville last year, obviously the whole Urban Meyer thing was a complete disaster. We all know that. And they won that game in London against the Dolphins with that crazy field goal at the end that curled in. Now, they face a Washington team that does have Carson Wentz, and people are not fans of Carson Wentz, but maybe the new surroundings of Washington and how last year ended in Indy, maybe it'll be a little better. But when you look at what Trevor Lawrence and the Jags have done, and for as good of a prospect as Trevor Lawrence is coming out of Clemson and his accomplished college career, now he has Doug Peterson as his head coach. I don't think this is the time to take Jacksonville. I really don't. That they came off last year. They beat, think about this, they beat Indianapolis and Buffalo as 2-touchdown home underdogs. That's how bad you are. You're not a 2-touchdown road underdog. You're a 2-touchdown home underdog. So they beat Indianapolis, Buffalo, and Miami last year. Those were 3 wins. 2 of them came by 3 points each. All right, so that's half their wins during this stretch, okay, of the 6-35. In 2020, they won 1 game, their first game against Indianapolis, lost the rest. They were a 7-point dog in that game. In 2019, the Jags, somehow they always beat Indianapolis. If they're playing Indianapolis, I feel good about it. But they beat the Colts and the Raiders towards the end of that year, getting 5, getting 7. That's in the stretch. And then before it, they had a better start to that season. But during the 6-35 tenure, they've been a bad underdog. Can't do it. I don't know how you can make an argument for Jacksonville unless you're just being anti-Washington in this one. And understandably, the Commanders, they have a little ways to go, but Washington won their division 2 years ago, albeit under 500. And last year they had some good wins. And they beat a lot of teams. They beat Tampa Bay, they beat Las Vegas, and a lot of their losses came against winning teams. So I just can't see it. I was liking Jacksonville, but then seeing a lot of people on them, I feel like the Commanders are the play. I really do. And they're down to 2.5. It's a good number. So that's our trend. So a lot of negative trends. Colts and Jags, maybe not so good looks in week 1. So that's it for tonight, because you have, for Major League Baseball, coming up in a little bit, Jacob deGrom at Caesars. He's laying $4 at Pittsburgh tonight on the road. And that game's coming up in just a few minutes. You have the Phillies and the Marlins. The Phillies are heavy favorites again. Marlins can't score. Cardinals are a $3 favorite against the Nationals. The Yankees with Garrett Cole, they're still playing the Twins now. They're in the bottom of the 11th, tied at 3 in the first game of that doubleheader. It got rained out yesterday. Cole's nearly a $2 favorite against Minnesota tonight. And the Rays are laying nearly $1.80 against the Red Sox. That game gets going in a little bit. But my goodness, like some of these lines. You know what? White Sox lead the Mariners 6-4 in the 6th. Good for them right now. If they can hold on. White Sox close at plus 175 at some places. So pretty impressive. Baseball card tomorrow is obviously not very big, going opposite the NFL. But you got Bills Rams tomorrow. Patrick Everson's going to join us tomorrow night. Vegas Insider's own Patrick Everson. He will be on the ground floor at an unknown sports book in Las Vegas, and he's going to give us the ticket counts and all the numbers for Bills Rams and also for the games this weekend in the NFL. So looking forward to that. And my thanks to Spencer Ray. Great job as always running the show. And our thanks to Vince Akins as well at SB Breakers on Twitter. You can find him and also find his selections on Vegas Insider. Don't forget about tomorrow, 11 a.m. Joe Osborne has got Chasing That Paper. And you know what? When you go to bed tonight, have a good night's sleep. When you wake up, you'll have football tomorrow. Real football, real NFL. Not NFL football. It's redundant. Real NFL tomorrow. Bills and the Rams from LA. So we're looking forward to that and finally getting it going. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.